Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of Women Investing in Women, Women in Tech, AI, and Gender Bias. We're going to go into it today because we are talking about all the AI scandals and our investments. And so, how do these scandals affect how funding has been happening in AI? Hey, Shay, how are you?
Hey, I'm happy to be here for the fourth time talking about AI and the topic of gender bias. As Kwamara said, today we have two cases of AI companies where things didn't go quite well. And of course, in this topic, we also have a couple questions whether gender bias can be connected to these issues, what we can learn from this, and kind of putting it in the context of our four series podcast that we've been having here together of uncovering the disadvantages and biases that make our lives as women harder, and how, of course, we can go against that and solve that.
Yeah, I just want to harken back to the fact that we've done this mini series, 4 episodes, going in deep, really just from a conversation that we had, and we realized we needed to sort of uncover all of these different aspects. And every time we talked, we're like, oh, there's another thing that we need to just go a little bit deeper in. And I think that's maybe that's kind of like AI. That's kind of the beauty of it, right? We see the surface and then we're going deeper, 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 deeper in. So yeah, if we start talking a little bit about the scandals that are happening, and we were finding out about what happened with Builder.AI, and I saw the article and I was like, Shay, what do you think about think about
Yes.
this?
Oh my goodness. It was
It's
all over
insane.
the news. It was all over the news, to be honest. And as a startup who is seeking funding, I was just a little bit like, getting a bit mad because Builder.AI was valued at $1.5 billion and actually even backed by Microsoft. And there was actually two levels of scandals or fraud that they committed. The first one was that they actually claimed that they had made $220 million in revenue. They kind of inflated their revenue by 300%, while it was actually 55 million revenue. And then the other crazier part was that they were selling the system as some sort of AI agent. So for everyone who doesn't know, AI agents are autonomous AIs that can do the tasks for you without you having to do anything. You just assign it to them and they go and fulfill all the steps needed to do that task. So actually you can tell your AI agent to get you water and it's going to go on your phone, order you water, let it send to you, and you don't have to do anything about that. Pay from your wallet. And yeah, they said that they have AI agents, but actually it was a technical team in India behind it. So it was actually human beings, actually the way we know it, fulfilling those tasks. And of course, that was not something they could cover for ages. And that's where we kind of ask our questions. How were these red flags not detected? And most importantly, how was a company like this able to secure funding of such high numbers?
Yeah, and I think the truth of the matter is we see this actually happening in almost every industry. There's always some kind of scandal, like this person has gotten so much money and yet they don't have any revenue. The company's about to go into bankruptcy. And you're like, okay, as an investor myself, and knowing how the space is, you do due diligence before you even give people money. You go through their finances, and yet here these folks are, and let's be clear, they're primarily male, though we have seen some women also going through this, but that particular person was a white woman. And so I always want to call these things out because there are biases in the ways that we interact with folks, and we have this belief system because they went to XYZ elitist school or they have XYZ things on their resume that they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and you just throw them money. And yet time and time and time again, we actually keep seeing that those companies don't actually act in any sort of ethical way. They oftentimes are not fiscally sound, and they don't seem to believe that they have some kind of fiduciary responsibility to their investors or even to the users on the platform. And to your point, then you've got other folks who are really struggling just for $10,000, $20,000. I mean, we're talking big leagues over here, but then, people who have actually put in the work, who literally have shown time and time again that they know what they're doing, and they're still out here begging for money. And so it talks a little bit about the biases around the funding streams that are happening. And I think the Builder AI is such an amazing case of that. And I think actually we're going to see, I hate to say this, and maybe it's because I'm a bit not of a naysayer, but I do feel like everybody running to AI for like investment dollars makes me feel like a little bit about the .com era that, it was going up, going up, going up, and then we'll have this bubble. Not to say that I don't think that AI is an important technology, but that the companies who are just slapping AI into their rhetoric so that they can get some of this funding, which is happening right now. I think we're going to see much more of what's happening with Builder AI as more and more people are getting funding through this AI space.
Yes, 100%. So I absolutely am with you. So to the investment part of it, I actually cannot believe that this happened, because one of the founders of Builder AI was already entangled in a previous fraud case. So I don't understand how the investors in that case, as you said, in due diligence type of way, they didn't do their background checks. Like they just, invested. And I was just like checking again, and it's huge sums. I mean, Kumar, we're having here Microsoft who sorry, let me check. I have the actual amounts here. So Microsoft had invested millions. In Qatar, the investment authorities had invested $250 million. And even like banks and partners and so on, they had major backers. And I'm thinking, these are big companies with big teams, and nobody did a background check on them. That is, it's like he was tied to a separate fraud investigation, and actually nobody looked at it. And another thing is, of course, to you saying that people are mostly overestimating the capabilities of AI. There was actually a case for OpenAI, the founder or the company of ChatGPT, where they said they also overestimated completely the performance of this AI. So we have this, and actually being in the industry, people have a lot of faith in it. And don't get me wrong, I think AI definitely has the capabilities to be there. But right now, it's not as easy as we think it is. It's not that you just tell it to be super smart and it's going to be super smart. You have to train it a lot. You have to give it the right context. It's all about the data and the training, and then also the system around it to give you quality outputs. Otherwise, the same quality of input you give it, the same quality of output you get. So in that case, yes, AI companies are absolutely inflating their technical capabilities, which raises 2 points in this case of Builder AI scandal. Is like, first of all, there needs to be background checks, there needs to be due diligence, and secondly, there needs to be a technical evaluation of the actual technical capabilities of what is promised, and in this case, what was the reason why it was able to raise that much money from major companies.
Yeah, I mean, how it's kind of like if you're already a player in that space, then I hate to say, you kind of get like a pass. And to your point about one of the founders already being immersed in fraudulent activities, again, this is nothing new. We have seen time and time again that oftentimes people in power are often doing shady things, and they still continue to have access and acquisition to wealth that is astronomical, really, at the end of the day. And not to get into politics, but a certain leader of a country has literally filed for bankruptcy multiple times. I mean, and so again, we have this idea that definitely is rooted in history and looking at data, to your point, that oftentimes men especially have the opportunity to fail up. Whereas women, oftentimes, if we fail one time, or if we have, if we're wrong one little time, all of a sudden it means that we're going to be wrong forever and can never be forgiven. And so you have that sort of dichotomy in the ways that people interact with men and women. I do think that has something to do with the funding models that get to happen. And then if you think about who has historically been able to access certain echelons of wealth, that tends to be the men who are chilling in their cigar clubs or on the golf courses. And we're seeing that becoming, we're seeing more women going to cigar clubs and going into these male dominated spaces, but still historically that's how things have been going on. And I think, like, when you see that old boys club, which is, I think Builder.AI is a great example of that. And most likely what we're going to see, unless someone ends up going to jail, is they'll build another company, and I bet you they'll be able to raise funds yet again.
Yeah, that's the sad part
about it.
Yeah, that's a sad part, to be honest. I mean, looking at the shocking statistic of only 2% of venture capital funding going to women-led companies is an extremely sad statistic that we have to beat. And I mean, it's hard to raise funding for startups regardless. But especially from my own experience going into investor meetings, I have to kind of put my tough guy pants on and, speak from a certain point of view so I know I'm being taken seriously. And that, having the application being in the tech industry, that again also comes with there's advantages, but definitely also disadvantages of being like, okay, are you sure you're able to build this? Are you, there's a lot of questioning. Mm-hmm. And so to compare this with the whole Builder.AI case, so many red flags, and nothing was detected and effortlessly secured funding. While with the female-led companies, the red flags, they can be there, of course, like we have to be able to take criticism. But at the end of the day, I don't think that this case would have even been a case with a female founder. They would have detected it immediately. Unfortunately.
I agree. And, it's interesting that you brought up that 2% funding stream, going to women. And what is actually interesting, we're following data, if anyone cared to follow data, and sometimes they'll tell you that they do, but you see things that happen with Builders.AI, you're kind of like, obviously you're not following a correct protocol. But anyway, but if you do look at data, you actually understand that, like, people who invest in women get a better return on their investment more often than they do return than on men. So yeah, you might have some unicorns, but in the investment game, that generally speaking, not every company that you invest in, and in fact, the majority of the companies you invest in are probably not going to give you a return. But you have the capital, you believe in them, and you go off and you do it. And so out of that 98%, there's only going to be a small percentage that actually give you a return on the investment. Out of the 2%, though, you actually have a stronger rate of return, because when women are invested in, they actually do much more around their due diligence, or they tend to be better leaders. They can build companies that are really sustainable, where people want to work for them. They create environments. Generally, this is generalities, of course, generally speaking, where people want to be there, stay there. And so they're there for the long haul. And also they're often thinking about how can they also pay it forward at the same time that they're receiving these funds. And so they're really thoughtful around the ways that they deploy capital. And so you actually, if you're truly an investor, really, you should be thinking and leaning towards like, oh, actually, I'd rather go to women funded businesses, because you do get a better return and a more consistent return on your investment than going to male-led organizations.
Yes, I heard about that. I heard that it's like higher revenue and it's also longer, so it's like more long-term stability. Although it
Yep.
takes, I saw that in the statistic, in average, it takes the women-led companies a bit longer. They're still more successful in the long-term game, which is what the game you play with a company. You play the long-term game. I mean, you're barely lucky to do like a 1 year, 2 year huge exit and secure hundreds of millions. So yeah, definitely with you there. And so that's kind of what we kind of bring up in the investment talks also.
Yeah. Yeah.
We always talk about this statistic because even if the investors don't know, I believe women should know. You should know your statistics, you should know the benefits you bring, your strengths. We really, really believe in strength led progress. So focusing on our strengths rather than our weaknesses. And so, yeah, that's the perspective we like to see ourselves from. But yeah, let's move on to the second AI scandal we have, and that one is Disney, our beloved Disney, suing Midjourney. So Midjourney is a how do you call it? It's a generative AI of pictures, videos, and it can kind of generate all types of images. And Disney sued against them because they said that Midjourney actually used their very popular Disney figures such as Elsa, Darth Vader, Bart Simpson, and Minions, like the iconic characters that we all know. They trained their AI models without permission of Disney. And so this raises some copyright issues. And of course, Midjourney said that the output of the images, it's not that it absolutely copied the trained data and replicates it. It's actually the trained data is a fraction of what that output is. And so that's what they've kind of are arguing with it. It's like baking a cake and somebody sues you because you use their eggs, but you're like, okay, those eggs, you don't even see them in that cake anymore. You don't even really taste it. And so, yeah, that's also another issue maybe raised around intellectual property, copywriting, what's actually whose, you know?
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a landmark case, I think, because it is going to talk about copyright infringement. It's gonna be
Yeah,
talking about intellectual property, trademarking, and we're talking about the big corporations. Disney and I think a couple of other animators actually went with them. Maybe Marvel, I can't remember, but I think some other folks are also um, suing Midjourney. And I think people understand conceptually what Midjourney is saying, but then you actually look at the output. The output looks like the actual character. That doesn't
yeah,
particularly seem like there's anything different. So I mean, listen, I'm not big into our corporations or whatever, but I think they have some. This is going to be an interesting case. I think they have some things to say and to think about. And also, I think that this is also has really great implications for what's going on. We know that celebrities have already started suing people for using their likeness, especially in really lewd and lascivious ways. Pornography, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is part of the privacy issue that I think we touched upon in the first episode that people were concerned about around their imaging. And I mean, unless you're super famous, probably nothing's probably gonna happen unless you know, unless you have somebody in your life that wants to, get some kind of revenge on you or be abusive towards you. But generally speaking, it's probably not going to be at the level that it is when we're talking about celebrities or when we're talking about corporations and we're talking about fans who like looking, and there's fan fiction, there's fandom. So if they know that they can go to Midjourney or any of these other generative AIs and sort of create their own little video, and then what happens if they decide to monetize off those videos? I think this is going to be really interesting. It's reminding me, and I'm totally going to date myself, but this is Napster. I don't know if anybody remembers Napster, but those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s will recall that there was a time where we could just sort of like download music without having to pay for it on this platform called Napster. And the music industry was like, after a while, was like, this is absolutely like, you cannot do this. You have to pay us for for being able to download this music. And anyway, Napster was sued and they were shut down, and it was like a whole thing. And actually, some individual people who are using Napster for their own economic gain were also sued by the companies. And I think we might start seeing some of this happening. So AI, this is a space, right? This is technology, and we know that as new things come up, we're going to be seeing all of these lawsuits. And what's interesting about lawsuits is that they then set a precedence of what is right for law, et cetera. So, everyone says, when you're out there that you should be trademarking, you should be making sure that you're safeguarding your IP, your intellectual property. Um, I just finished judging around, and someone was talking about like, oh, I just, we trademarked this intellectual property. And then, but when I was looking at what they were doing, they were using things that were already out there. So I was like, is that your intellectual property, or are you just using other people's stuff and building off of that? So I was like, I'm not a lawyer, but I was definitely thinking to myself, I don't know if that actually is going to cut it in a from a legal standpoint, because you use actually somebody else's proprietary tools in order to build your tool. So I don't know. This is where things are going to start getting really, really tricky. What are your thoughts?
I honestly, this is the topic where I'm always sitting in the back and just listening, because we talked about it in our first episode, whether training data should be, especially towards women, because we knew that the dark skinned women in facial recognition, for example, have 35% higher error rates with the AI, which is problematic, really, really problematic. Whereas for like the average light-skinned man, it's under 1%. So again, a crazy comparison. But on the other hand, again, like for me, it's the motives of these companies, and it's mostly economic motives and commercial motivations, and it's always like a tricky one for me. I get it. I really get it, because especially with the actors and especially with women, and as you said, in the pornographies nowadays, that's kind of scary. I mean, I get it. I really get why this is a big controversy, but on the other hand, we also have to accept that AI is here, and it's relevant for the AI to be trained with data that is relevant to us. So dark-skinned women should have more data representation, so that those 35% of error rates go down, because we
Right.
seriously have a problem if that remains the same. And it's, again, I'm very, there is arguments for both sides, really.
Yeah.
There is arguments for both sides. I think the best way to go about it is to really, really focus on the ethical motivations of using AI, and making sure that that is supported, especially with companies that have more ethical goals.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like the government really rewards the companies that are more economically driven and more commercially driven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rewarded by the government. So maybe we should, solve this problem by the roots and say, hey, the current AI advancements are fast, they're good, and they come also with their bad things. But hey, let's all like take a step back and see why we're pushing and scaling so fast when there's so many concerning things going on, and why companies feel obligated to be competing so quickly and building and building and building, because there is an economic reward for it.
Yeah.
So maybe we should reward ethical work. Maybe we should reward sustainable work more. And that again, I feel like connects very well with our first episode, where we said, hey, let's put the human soft skills, the humanness, in the center of this topic, and talk about what we really want our reality to look like in 5 to 10 years, because that's exactly the time frame that it's going to take for us to see crass changes. So yeah, we should probably systematically approach this problem, and not only in a technical way but also in a behavioral psychological um way for both genders, or for all genders
Yeah.
actually, for all genders, and see if we can kind of mitigate those risks that we are talking about in our 4 episodes of AI and gender bias.
Yeah, I mean, I love this idea of like, what can we do to slow it down? What can we do to be a lot more ethical, to stop and have some of these really uncomfortable, in-depth conversations? And also, like, let's be transparent. Let's keep it real. AI is great, but it is not the be all end all of everything. And it may not be the tool and the solution within your own business model. So maybe even if, from an investor standpoint, we need to move back from the idea that, oh, everything needs to be AI. So people are just like, well, I got to figure out how to like make my product AI based in some kind of way. And I'm, oftentimes I'm kind of like, okay, maybe, but tell me more about the process. Tell me more about the actual problem that you're trying to solve. Tell me more about like how that is actually solving the problem. Is this creating a more streamlined process, or are we going to be inundated with everything just being AI based, and nothing feeling real necessarily, right? And so we're going to want, again, more of these human connections. Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about is a systematic approach, and I think right now it definitely feels like every sector is just kind of like wham, 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 throwing stuff, and then everything that's coming back is kind of like reactionary. There just hasn't really been a really thoughtful way around talking about what are the ethical implications of AI? What does the funding stream say? How does this play a role in government? How do we keep people safe from predatory companies or even predatory actors in the space? And again, most of the time, the people who are victimized by that kind of thing tend to be women. And so, what can we do to ensure that people are safe as they're interacting with this tool? I don't think we have the solution, but I think we have to start asking these questions, right? And I think that we need to start asking these questions of not only the companies, but also the government who helps to put these policies in place. And so that we have a real good understanding and a foundation of how we are working. I don't think AI is going anywhere, but I do think that we're not using it in a way that's like completely thoughtful and ethical right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, as it is the nature of systematic approaches, it needs a couple areas that we all need to kind of focus on. And I definitely agree. Politics, I mean, we have to talk about politics. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about politics, but not wanting and not needing to talk about politics is a privilege, because politics are influencing everything around us. They're regulating everything around us. And at the end of the day, there needs to be measurements taken to provide us with a sense of safety, with a sense of ownership, with a sense of security for all the citizens in this world to be able to enjoy and live their life and actually act on their rights, and and have an opportunity that is equal for everybody. And unfortunately, right now, the way things are scaling and the way things are advancing, specifically in the AI industry, it's not really centered around ethical motivations. I don't want to say that there isn't ethical aspects. I actually hope and wish for there to be more ethical processes or validations or requirements for any type of AI or any stage of the AI development. However, the overall motivation and the overall goal that we're following, what is that? Is it to be number one AI-led company with the highest revenue? Do you want to be the next big tech for those reasons? Is it about power? And so that's kind of where things, it's the same old question that we ask ourselves at the end of the day, just in a new context to us, is that when we're creating a technological advancement, right? Something so novel, something so innovative. How can we make sure that this technology is safe for all of us and is actually beneficial? And I know things come with advantages as well as disadvantages. However, the disadvantages in this specific case of AI, they can mean a lot of bad things.
Yeah, yeah,
Like really, really bad things. And we're just scaling this. We're just scaling this. And I believe, I mean, you as someone in the education field, in the investment field, you know what you can do to contribute to this, or like contribute to solving these issues. Me as someone in the startup world and also being in the AI industry, I have to ask myself, how can I contribute to this? But everyone out there, like every average person there, should think about it. How do I flag gender bias when I am interacting with AI and it gives me a biased answer? I need to flag that. I know
yeah,
it's annoying. I know people don't want to take those 5 minutes and don't have the time for it, but please do so. Please do anything that you can do right now from your own perspective, the influence you have on people around you, to spread this awareness. And the most importantly, educate yourself. Everybody should educate themselves on what AI is in its core. So what are we creating here even? And then at the same time, where is the critical points of development and also um, uh, implementation of AI, where we need to really, really be careful and put measurements and safety measurements there.
yeah.
And also pressure your governments and also raise your issues, really raise your issues. Critical thinking is at its all-time high in necessity. Like we really need critical thinkers right now.
I think that's right. And I love that point that you said that, anybody, everybody has a duty, a responsibility, and you actually can have the power to call out gender bias, obviously in your life with people around you. But certainly if you're using an AI tool and you see that the outcome feels gendered in some way or gender biased in some way, you can literally just type and say like, this this is not accurate. This is really this
You can
is
give it a
gender
thumbs
bias or
down.
whatever, or you can give it a thumbs down. There's a million and one ways that you can indicate to the chat GPT, for example, that's what most people are using, is wrong. It's not what you're looking for. And I tell people all the time, it's a conversation that you're having with the chat GPT, and it's learning from you. So think of it in that way, that you're actually you're sharing knowledge with it and it's sharing knowledge with you. And then you're going back and forth and you're having these kind of educational dialogues, really, for lack of a better way. And I think like that helps to frame things a little bit better when you're thinking like, oh, I'm having an educational dialogue, I'm learning, and the machine is also learning from me. And so the more that I can put in, more of my perspective, so me as Black woman, educator, investor, et cetera, the more they'll have of that in the system that they can then pull from. And so that continues to multiply the more of us that do that and are like, and I know some people who actually, name their chat GBT like, this is my other husband, this is my boyfriend or whatever, this is my best friend.
I know so many people who have a ChatGPT boyfriend or husband. I get it. It's sometimes you can have very intimate talks with it. I mean, sometimes when I'm at a really low stage and I happen to not have my friends around me or they're busy, I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, it's me again. I'm frustrated.
It's me again. Let's talk about this for a second. What can I do for you, Shay? But no, seriously. But no, that's the reality of it, right? We're having a conversation with it, and I think like just like you're having a conversation with friends, like if there's a time you need to call it out, call it out. Oh, this is not right.
Yeah.
So it continues to learn and iterate. And certainly when I use it, I think almost every single time, like, this is not exactly what I'm looking for. Can you please do this? When I talk about diversity, this is what I want to see, et cetera, et cetera. And I give it like pretty clear definitions and parameters that I'm looking for. So feel free. I mean, I might write a whole essay in there as the prompt and then see what gets spit back out to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the longer the prompt, the more precise the prompt, the better. But that also, for me, raises the question of how important is it for us to actually learn about language. And I'm not
Mm,
not talking about different languages, but as we, communicate with the AI, with our natural language, with the way we actually talk and speak, how can we phrase and communicate to the AI to actually define and actually talk about what we feel and what we think. So for example, in the case of the AI giving you a response that was gender biased, you should be able to communicate it in the right way to the AI, what points and what dimensions of that were
mm,
biased towards your gender. And sometimes that can be a tricky thing, it's, I mean, even me in these lives, of course English is not my native language, but even me, sometimes I have language linguistic limitations on things I want to say and things I feel or things I have on my mind. And so that's also a really, really important thing, the way we communicate, the way we have awareness about our thoughts, our internal monologue, and kind of also our feelings is really important for our interaction with the AI to have, as you said, that educational dialogue. Because of course you need to see the issue to be able to point out the issue.
yeah, no, I think that's a really good point too. So also being aware and self-aware and continuing to self-reflect. I think that was a great reflection, Shay. And those are the kinds of things that we want to continue to do individually, right? We should always be learning and growing as an individual. And then how can we translate our learnings into the AI modules that we're using, whichever ones they may be. Um, I do want to go back to the investor piece for a second. The money, where does the money flow? How does the money flow? And so you talked about having investor meetings as a founder. And then, of course, I know that you recently won a pitch competition. Yes, da, 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 congratulations. I
Thank
would
you.
love to hear a little bit, just because why not? What's the difference between having an investor meeting? What's the difference with pitching, and do you feel that one lends itself better for women founders than the other?
Okay, so I have to honestly pitch my product for this. So we are building a system that is AI powered, that is kind of like a CRM system for coaching companies. Why? Because we believe in personal growth, but in a personalized and also very smart way. And we see with AI the potential of getting rid of all those static ways to track your goals and progress. And people are feeling increasingly confused and lost in life. And of course, burnout rates right now are at all-time high. And then you ask yourself the question, with the personal development industry, where there's so many funds, so much money, so many tools, so many applications, how can it be that we still weren't able to solve the burnout issue? And I mean, even in the times of AI, it's huge times of uncertainty, and people just need that type of support. And so that's kind of what my problem was. I personally felt very lost in life too. That's why I wanted to create this product. Now, my background is not data scientist, computer engineer, coder. I did not know how to code. I did not know like specifically how to program and write, make an application. I am a first time founder. So those are kind of like, that's about my background. But the issue is very, very personal to me and also very personal to my co-founder, Karin. And so when we pitch, we have an emotional pitch because this is an emotional issue.
Mm,
Now, when we talk about our solution that is ultimately there to make coaches' lives easier, as well as the coachees, so the clients of the coaching companies, feel more at priority and have more personalized journeys that are adaptive to their context, so they're also able to feel the value, as well as the coaches feeling less overwhelmed with all the admin work and all the tracking work, and having a tool such as AI to support them with customizing and kind of tailoring the experience to get the best outcome for the client. That is a huge, huge opportunity that we see and that we want to create. When I go into investor meetings and I pitch the product, it's always like, oh, it's kind of like a wellness solution, and it's like, it's like, I get it. It has something to do with wellness, but I feel like it's kind of connected to a different part of wellness that people see, and they don't see the importance or the necessity for personalized solutions. And then again, something like the feelings that I was just like explaining to you. Of course, I can, tell them about the burnout statistics and all over, but it's an overall feeling that I feel like a lot of us feel. And if the investor doesn't have an understanding for that, it's very hard to kind of explain to them the necessity or the reason or the history behind why we came up with this product. So yeah, it's most of the times there's kind of like a barrier in communicating the emotional aspect of the product, but also communicating it in a way that investors understand that there's of course also potential with what we can achieve economically, because of course a business needs to have profit, and we do our homework, we do our calculations, and it is very true that it is a profitable business, but oftentimes that is overlooked a little bit, or a lot of other objections kind of get in the way of that. And again, I want to also say that this is also might be very normal for startups communicating to investors, of course. But yeah, it's always a little bit harder as a woman to be taken seriously and to actually put the facts on the table and say, look, we are capable, we can do this. We promise we give our all for this, and we will do our homework, we will do our research.
Yeah. So I'm hearing like in the investor meeting, it's like, let's just be more factual. I mean, maybe we can
Yes.
grab some kind of relationship, but like, let's be a little bit more hardline. In the pitch, you can be, you can show more of your personality. You can be a little bit, you put the story behind the why of why you're doing this work. And then that resonates because, usually when you're pitching to a room full of people who can then connect with you in a variety of different ways. And so, do you feel like for women, pitching tends to be an easy, I don't want to say easier, but a more likely way of at least raising funds, uh, a way to maybe even practice honing in on what an investor meeting might feel and sound like?
So you asked if it's easier for women, or sorry, I didn't get the
Yeah,
first.
so I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, I guess if I'm okay, I'm a woman founder, maybe I would like some investor meetings, but is it maybe easier for me to raise funds from a pitching perspective versus going out after individual investors or VC funds,
Mm,
based off of the nature of what a pitch is versus what an investor meeting can entail. I'm just curious. I mean, I guess I do have a thought, but it just popped in my head. So it's not,
yeah.
I'm
Uh,
curious what
yeah,
you think. I'm happy to say what I think, but
um, No, but I mean that's a valid question, and I think the pitching part might be more effective for you. I personally, I like to approach people, as you experience yourself. I'm kind of like a outgoing person, so I just like meet people. I'm like, hey, listen, I have this idea. Let's talk. Let's connect. For me, the personal way is always kind of the better way for my personal personality. But pitching, it's because I have a general assumption that as a woman, you like to portray and present things in a more nuanced way. And it's a lot of times that it's not perceived as nuanced. And again, with pitches, it's very, I mean, the standard in the industry, it's super factual, super straight up, super this and this and this. Okay. And it's like you have to kind of kill the objections, you de-risk everything that the investor might think or you know, raise within the pitch, which is valid. But again, if we're talking, connecting that with the AI, like how can we promote companies that have ethical motivations, I feel like we should leave a little bit of space for that nuance in there, because it's oftentimes in the nuance where we can communicate human values, where we can communicate the soft skills, where we can communicate the ethical motivations or the sustainable motivations, or even like leave a little bit of a room for the character of the business itself, because I feel like a business or a company can have its own character, and that is it's like the company culture.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit of the company culture. So I think the way we create pitch decks, at least for me and my co-founder, we really want to make sure that that essence of the culture is present in the pitch. But the pitches that I have seen that have been successful, they were more like facts. So I don't know, as a woman, should you go against your nature of being more nuanced and wanting to communicate that other layer of your company and your motivation? Or should you stay with the facts and like kind of the de-risking and like objection killing? Probably the secondary, if you want the funding, which is a little bit sad. But for example, for teammates, I have the overall impression that the first one kind of lands better, because with the team you are actually, and as you said, you're creating an environment that is supposed to feel safe and productive and kind of desirable, attracting A players. This is what everybody wants. Everybody wants A players. So you have to kind of create that culture and communicate that culture for people to want to, you know, switch their jobs and come to you. But overall, when I'm pitching to women, I can combine those two. So it's, and you know, with you, for example, when I was pitching the product to you, I mean, you immediately got it and you immediately were able to kind of follow up on it and like even say, like talk about things that resonated with you personally and from your own experiences. But with male investors, I generally do not have that experience, to be honest.
And yeah, so and again, an investor game is also, I think, a relationship game. So we're almost at time. Our series is just about ending. So what started off as like, let's just do one conversation, has turned into this 4-part mini series. And before we say goodbye, Shay, is there anything that you want to leave our audience with?
I just, first of all, want to thank you for creating this space. But overall, I think believe in being special. Listen to that voice in you that raises questions, even if those things might not sound very logical at first. Go and pursue it and understand why. And thirdly, try to keep the theme of consciousness close with you. Try to be aware of yourself, of your surroundings, and educate yourself on everything where you feel like you're not educated. And I think Quamara's platform is the perfect place for that. So anything educational, you're right here. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for listening to us and hearing out what we might have to contribute to this overall topic of AI development and gender bias. And of course, I am very happy if anybody likes to connect and follow me on social media. You can follow my company's social media, Conscious the app. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Faye. So while our series of Women in Tech, AI, and Gender Bias is done, Women Invest in Women is a national TV show, global tour. We kick off next week in New Orleans. So really excited about our first episode, and then that will be coming out live on July 18th. So make sure you stay tuned to all of our social media platforms so you don't miss the season premiere. Thank you again so much, Shay. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Bye. Peace.
Bye.